It is my great displeasure to have to listen to the member from Edmonton Centre. He and his colleague Wilkinson are among the most evil in the Liberal caucus and government, which is really saying something considering the clientele in that party. They are both smooth talking, educated Pharisees, the same ones who would have tried to trap Jesus with legal questions. Let's hear what they had to say in their announcement.
Wilkinson and I met with the Premier and members of her team earlier today, and we discussed how to collaborate on energy projects, critical minerals, hydrogen, which Minister Wilkinson will talk about in a minute.
How can we collaborate when they actively want to destroy our energy industry? There is no cooperation here from the federal government. They want to crush our ability to produce.
I raised concerns that our government has with the Premier's reckless and irresponsible idea to pull Albertans out of the Canada Pension Plan.
That is not reckless or irresponsible. It's the responsible thing to do. It has to happen because we disproportionately contribute billions into the pension plan every year, and the returns for seniors individually are dismal.
Thus weaken the pension for Albertans plus all Canadians. I also issued my strong concerns about how she's managing the childcare file, which we were able to make some progress on. And we also talked about the mismanagement of the healthcare system, how the billions of dollars that we should be using should be put in the right place. And then I voiced strong opposition to what the Premier is proposing with the 2S LGBTQ community. And so we had a conversation that was frank and robust. And
so he's voicing opposition to the fact that parents have choice. This is nothing new. Of course, this is to be expected from this government now. If it's radical, they consider it normal. If it's normal, they consider it radical. They've inverted everything. They've turned what's good and made it evil. What does Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 say? They've turned what's bitter, they've made it sweet. They've turned light into darkness and darkness into light.
Happy to take your questions en français. J'aimerais dire que
was standing in for Minister LeBlanc in his capacity as Intergovernmental Affairs Minister. Minister LeBlanc was caught in New Brunswick, and I think is probably on his way here now. I was focused primarily with Premier Smith on a lot of the energy-related issues and the economic opportunity sets of issues. We certainly talked about the clean electricity regulation. We talked a little bit about the oil and gas cap. But we spent a lot of time talking about the future of ammonia, the future for small modular reactors, the work that we are doing across a range of different things, including critical minerals, where I think the province has great ambitions and where we want to work together to enable the economic opportunities for all Albertans. At the end of the day.
Yeah, right. Notice the Orwellian newspeak. Clean energy, as if oil and gas is dirty. Critical minerals, as if they're absolutely necessary to ensure that we have electricity in the future. All of this intended to completely shift the mindset of Canadians to accepting this neo-Babylonian way of life.
We represent Albertans, she represents Albertans, and Albertans want us to find pathways to make good decisions. So
he doesn't even believe it. You can tell on Wilkinson's face, like he's borderline laughing, because he doesn't even believe what he's saying. They represent Albertans. This government represents Albertans. That's like saying wolves represent sheep. Albertans aren't sheep. But it's like saying predator represents its desired prey. It's a joke. And Wilkinson knows it. Again, you can tell. He could barely speak that sentence. It was so absurd, which again is borderline miraculous considering the Liberal government speaks absurdities every day.
With that?
Remind on the LGBTQ policies.
I'll start with Catherine's question. Yes, I did. And there's not going to be a lot of common ground in the short term on this. I indicated to the Premier that I thought she had to go back to base principles and talk to people in the community.
Wrong base principles. What's he talking about, base principles? The Liberal government doesn't believe in base principles. They don't believe in the foundations of law. They don't believe in law itself. I talk about that in this new book, Kingdom of Cain, that I've written. In chapter 4, I discuss in detail how men and women in government have absolutely no care for law at all. He doesn't want to return to principles. His entire goal is to make sure there are no principles. That's what Trudeau himself says. We live in a diverse society. We live in one where people can believe whatever they want, whatever truth they desire. Hypocrite.
She said to me that she had personal experience in this space, and so I encouraged her more than once to meet with members of the trans community, to talk with medical professionals, to sit down and talk with teachers. And I was very clear that what I see in the proposals is to take schools and make them less safe for gender questioning kids, and also that it's an othering, and that you're going to have kids at school looking over their back wondering who's going to out them, and that this simply—
It's more accurate to say what he saw in the proposal was that the government isn't given as much control over our children, and because they want to indoctrinate them, that's inexcusable for the member from Edmonton Centre.
doesn't make kids safe. There was a disagreement on when kids can avail themselves, when youth can avail themselves of gender affirming care, and I said there are already rules in place, and so I was very clear to the Premier that she needed to broaden the consultation, change these regulations, or that our opposition would continue.
Sortez de cette rencontre-là rassuré.
Non. Regarde, sur les questions des personnes qui se disent
Un consensus, ça semble dire s'il fait trop.
Okay. New
I think we have a lot of work with people for
That she heard. You said you weren't. Yeah, you said you weren't reassured. Did she say anything that gave you a sense that she heard what you had to say? That any change was coming?
I didn't hear anything that change was coming. I heard that the position is held firmly by the Premier, and so I encouraged her to spend more time with people in the trans community, with medical professionals, with teachers, with people for whom this is going to have a significant effect. And I said, look, outing kids at school isn't helpful. In fact, it's harmful. And so I think we have a lot of work to do to continue to mobilize on this issue and to let UCP MLAs know that it's not the Alberta that we want.
Oh, it certainly isn't the Alberta they want. But remember, they don't want Alberta. They want to turn this entire country into something totally unrecognizable. How do we defeat this argument? Simple. We use the scriptures. Genesis 1:27. What do the scriptures say? Male and female, he created them. It's something sacred. It's not something to be changed at will, at whim. Smith needs to hold firm on her position. We encourage her strongly to do so. And the silent majority agrees with us. Although it's time for the silent majority to become a vocal majority.
If she does end up bringing this policy forward as proposed, did you mention anything about what the federal government may do in that case? For example, withholding funding from the transfers?
That didn't come up, but as I've said before, ministers of health at our government have held money back from jurisdictions that contravene the Canada Health Act, and we will do so in the future.
So it is possible. Do you think it is a contravention of the Canada Health Act?
I can't say that without seeing the regulations, but Minister Holland and I have had this conversation.
What changed on childcare?
Pardon?
You mentioned earlier that there was some progress on childcare. Can you update us?
Look, I think I said you've left money on the table. Why are you doing that? You're saying that you can't pay your childcare workers enough money, and yet you've left money on the table in Ottawa. Take the money and invest in people, and you have a $5.5 billion surplus. So there was willingness to have a system work as well in Alberta as it does across the country, and I found
which is terribly. Have people looked? Has the government, and they have looked at the current structure and state of daycare in the country? It's a disaster. It's a terrible disaster. Remember, government, whenever they give money, demands loyalty in return. Government does nothing for free, and it certainly doesn't give our money out for free. The more that they disperse into the community, the more power and control they exercise. It would be better if we never signed on to that daycare agreement.
on that to be a good point of conversation. And so I indicated that I'll be working with Minister Suds, Minister LeBlanc, and PMO to make sure that whatever issues are in place that could come from the federal government, we will resolve. But the reality is that we transferred $3.8 billion to the province to get to 62,500 spaces, both in the private and public sector, and the province hasn't delivered.
When you talk to the Premier, and she has a suite of these policies that are designed to, deal with trans kids and gender diverse kids, did you say which ones you felt were the most harmful, or was it all of them that you simply said, no bueno, we can't support any of this, we want you to take them all off the table? Or did you kind of hone in on one or two that you said, you know, while you may want to go, people might have discussion down this road, we certainly can't go down this one.
We talked about the safety of kids at school and making sure that schools stay safe places. And I pushed the Premier on being clear in her communications about which medical procedures are available to people, and they're all at the age of majority. That was confusing in her video. And so she has to be clear about what she's proposing. And that's why it's really going to matter to see what this legislation looks like. And I said, look, just stop, pause, meet with people and see if what you've put in the proposals actually makes sense, because the people that I'm talking with are very scared, terrified, and we both have to deliver for Albertans. And this is distracting you from what I hear on the doors are the real concerns of Albertans.
Remember, whenever they use the word safe space, they mean indoctrinating space. Like, imagine making the argument, as is being made right now, that parents don't want the absolute and best safety for their children, at least on the whole. Of course, there are exceptions. There are always exceptions. This isn't a perfect world. But at any rate, imagine making the argument that parents don't want what's best for their children, that parents don't want to the best of their abilities, raise them up in law. Imagine arguing that they don't want to ensure the safety of their children. Part of that means, believe it or not, knowing what's happening in school. To argue against that is complete and total government overreach. It's sinister, totally sinister.
Did she know? I'm just curious. Did she know you were going to be in this meeting? She said this morning that she hadn't scheduled anything with you yet. Did you ambush her here, or was that?
No, not at all. We had Minister LeBlanc stuck in a snowstorm, and as Alberta Minister, I was happy to represent him on the intergovernmental file. Premier Smith and I have sat down before. When she threw out these proposals last week, I asked to meet with her right away. And due to scheduling conflicts, that wasn't able to take place, and snow allowed us to meet.
Just so we're clear.
There's a story from Nehemiah about a man named Sanballat. Nehemiah is building the wall in Jerusalem, and Sanballat, opposition, serious opposition, keeps contacting Nehemiah saying, let's meet, let's talk about this, let's talk about things. And every time Nehemiah says, no. It should be exactly the same here. What's the point in meeting with these coyotes? Like, for what purpose? To hear about how evil we are as Alberta? I see absolutely no reason to meet with these vultures at all. There is no comprehensive dialogue which can be maintained, considering that these men and women in the Liberal government are actively involved in the complete destruction of law.
Because you said it in French, you're not reassured after this meeting, so why aren't you?
No, I'm not reassured at all, because the Premier didn't commit to meeting with trans people. She didn't commit to meeting with medical professionals who have guidelines and protocols and procedures that have been researched for some time. She did not indicate meeting with teachers or with parents who are affected by this issue. And so I think there's work to do to continue to be very clear with the Premier and UCP MLAs that an attack on trans kids and the 2S LGBTQ community in 2024 is not on.
The polls are clear. People are overwhelmingly in favor of this new policy of Smith's. The UCP grassroots certainly supports it. The Liberal government knows that people are seeing through their sinister objectives.
They already have very similar policies, but Alberta seems to go a step further. Are you concerned that now other provinces are going to follow suit and go, to the same lengths that Alberta is, or potentially further?
Absolutely. As I've said before, you can bet that other conservative jurisdictions are looking at this very closely. And this has to be a line in the sand. Like, Danielle Smith cannot bring these kind of harms to people in our province. And I mean, look, silence is complicity. Where is the Ontario government on this? You've already seen Pierre Poilievre indicate very closely that he's supporting Danielle Smith and her policies that are clearly taking on 2S LGBTQ2 this morning.
These radicals, these disgraceful radicals want us to live in a world where it is radical to let parents have control over their children. It's despicable. It is so despicable. It's so evil. We can't be harsh enough about it. This is an image here of evil. All of us are scared of big monsters. No. The thing to be scared of are these vile men and women in suits, clean, pressed suits, walking on waxed floors in the House of Commons, giving press conferences. Their evil knows no bounds.
this morning, he posted that he supports Danielle Smith. He released a video this morning, and so he's shown Canadians who he is this morning.
I think you've caught some of us off guard, Minister, but I'm going to ask you.
I said it in the House of Commons, so I better be right. So it's out.
She made this announcement last week, knowing that she was coming here within days. Whatever else Premier Smith's intentions are, and her stated intention is care for children within her province. Do you think that on some level she wants a fight with you and the federal government on this issue, and that perhaps you're giving it to her?
Look, I can't comment on the machinations of why she would put these policies forward. I have to take it on the face of the fact that she's put these policies forward now. And I have parents and kids and teachers and docs in my province scared and others terrified at what this means for them. And so I'm always going to defend members of my community, and I'm going to defend Albertans.
Nope. No sense in listening to any more. Man's a liar. Like, he's a demonstrable liar. We see right through his vicious. Well, facade is wrong. He puts on this caring facade is more accurate. Behind the mask, he is a vicious politician. He has one objective, which is to advance the purposes and goals of Antichrist. To Premier Smith and the UCP, government bureaucrats in this province, and to the grassroots, don't let him.